The crystal cities of Zephyros floated like jewels in the orange clouds of their gas giant world. Each city sparkled with gentle blue light that came from the harmony crystals at their center. These crystals had powered their civilization for thousands of years, drawing energy from the planet's swirling gases and the songs their people sang together each morning. High Coordinator Velnara stood on the observation deck of the largest floating city, watching the horizon with growing fear. Dark shapes moved through the clouds like hungry sharks. The Korthak Empire had arrived 3 days ago, and already 2 of the smaller cities had gone dark. Their screams still echoed in her memory. The Korthak ships looked like massive insects, made of metal and flesh. They had tentacles that reached out to grab the crystal cities and drain their power cores. Once a city was drained, it would fall from the sky into the crushing depths of the gas giant below. Everyone inside would die. Velnara's people were not fighters. The Zephyrians had never needed weapons or armies. They solved problems by talking and singing together until they found harmony. But the Korthak did not want to talk. They only wanted to take and destroy. High Coordinator called Science Leader Morthak as he rushed onto the deck. His normally calm blue skin had turned pale with worry. The deep scanners show more Korthak ships arriving. At least 50 more vessels. Velnara closed her 4 eyes and took a deep breath. How long before they reached the capital city? 6 hours, maybe less. They move faster as they drain more power from our cities. The sound of distant explosions reached them through the thick atmosphere. Another city was dying. Velnara felt the harmony song of her people growing weaker as fewer voices joined the morning ritual. Soon there would be no voices left at all. "What about the distress beacon?" she asked. "Have you found anyone who might help us?" Morthak's expression brightened slightly. "Yes, High Coordinator. Our long-range sensors detected a promising civilization in the nearby star system. The third planet shows signs of advanced technology and peaceful energy use. Their electromagnetic patterns suggest they value cooperation and harmony, much like us." Velnara felt a small spark of hope. They sound perfect. Surely beings who understand peace will help us find a way to stop this violence. The transmission array is ready. We can send one message before the Korthak destroy our communication center. They hurried through the crystal corridors to the transmission room. Other Zephyrians worked frantically at the controls, their 6-fingered hands dancing over panels that glowed with soft light. The room hummed with energy as they prepared to send their cry for help across the void of space. Velnara stood before the transmission device and began to speak. Her voice carried the musical quality of her people, even when filled with desperation. "Greetings, peaceful beings of the third planet. We are the Zephyrians of the Kepler 442 system. We face extinction at the hands of the Korthak Empire. These aggressive beings destroy everything they touch. They have taken our cities and enslaved our people. We are not warriors. We know only the ways of peace and harmony. Surely you, as fellow seekers of wisdom and cooperation, will understand our plight. We beg you to send advisors or mediators who might help us find a peaceful solution to this crisis. Time grows short. Please, if you value life and harmony as we do, help us." The message repeated in mathematical equations and star charts, showing exactly where the Zephyrians were and what was happening to them. Then the transmission launched into space, racing toward the third planet of a small yellow star. 2 hours later, the Korthak destroyed the transmission array with a blast of bioplasma. Velnara watched from her window as the metal and flesh ships moved closer to her city. Meanwhile, millions of miles away, the message traveled through the darkness of space toward a blue and green world where creatures called humans lived. These humans had built their civilization on a planet that tried to kill them every day. They had survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, deadly diseases, and countless wars. They had learned to fight not because they were evil, but because everything on their world fought to survive. Lisa Martinez sat at her workstation in the Deep Space Monitoring Station in the Nevada desert. The night shift was usually quiet, with only the distant hum of computers and the occasional coyote howling outside. She sipped her coffee and watched the screens that monitored radio signals from space. At 2:47 a.m., every alarm in the facility started screaming. Lisa jumped up, spilling coffee on her uniform. The main screen showed a massive spike in alien radio traffic coming from the direction of the constellation Lyra. The signal was strong, complex, and definitely not natural. "Holy crap," she whispered, then grabbed her phone. "Commander Harris, you need to get down here right now. We just received what looks like first contact." Commander Paul Harris arrived 15 minutes later, still putting on his uniform. He was a former Air Force pilot who had spent 20 years watching the skies for signs of alien life. Now at age 52, he was about to see his dream come true. "What do we have?" he asked. Lisa played back the transmission. The alien voice was beautiful and musical, but the universal translator software quickly decoded the mathematical portions of the message. As the meaning became clear, Harris felt his excitement turn to concern. "They're asking for help," he said quietly. "This isn't a greeting. It's a distress call." Within an hour, the message had reached the highest levels of human government and military command. Admiral Jake Thompson, commander of the Human Defense Fleet, sat in his office at Space Command headquarters, listening to the alien message. For the third time, Admiral Thompson was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his time as a Marine. He had fought in the colonial wars and helped establish humanity's first military bases beyond Earth's solar system. He understood war better than most people understood peace. "So let me get this straight," he said to his staff. "We just received our first message from aliens, and they're being attacked by other aliens who want to wipe them out." "That's correct, sir," replied Colonel Amy Foster, his intelligence officer. "The Zephyrians appear to be a peaceful species. Their message suggests they've never faced anything like this before." Admiral Thompson stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the ships of humanity's space fleet. Hundreds of vessels floated in the orbital shipyards, from small fighters to massive battleships. Each one was built for war because humanity had learned that peace only lasted when you were strong enough to defend it. "They asked for advisors and mediators," he said. "They think we're going to send diplomats to have a nice chat with these Korthak people." "The transmission does suggest they expect a peaceful response," Colonel Foster agreed. Admiral Thompson turned back to his staff. "How long to get a battle group to their location?" "Sir, are you sure that's the right approach? Maybe we should send a diplomatic mission first." The Admiral looked at his officers with the expression of a man who had seen too much of war to believe in the kindness of strangers. "Colonel, when someone is shooting at you, you don't send a diplomat, you send Marines. These Zephyrians called for help. We're going to help them, but we're going to do it the human way." He pressed a button on his desk. "Get me Captain Ryan. Sullivan, tell him to prep the Valiant for immediate departure, full combat loadout, and send word to the shipyards. I want the entire Third Fleet ready to move within 24 hours. As his staff hurried to carry out his orders, Admiral Thompson looked back at the star charts showing the location of the Zephyrian system. The aliens had sent their message to what they thought was a peaceful, wise civilization that would solve their problems with words and diplomacy. They were about to learn that humans had a very different definition of problem-solving. And the Korthak Empire was about to discover why most species in the galaxy called Earth a death world. Captain Ryan Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Valiant as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zephyrian system. The ship's sensors immediately began scanning the area, and what they found made every person on the bridge go silent. "Dear God," whispered Navigation Officer Beth Davis as the main screen showed the destruction ahead of them. The Zephyrian gas giant looked like a wounded animal. Massive alien ships, each one the size of a small city, crawled across its orange atmosphere like metal parasites. They had long tentacles that reached down into the clouds, pulling up the floating crystal cities and draining them of their glowing energy. When a city went dark, it fell into the crushing depths of the planet below. "How many cities are left?" Captain Sullivan asked. "Sensors showed 12 cities still active," reported Science Officer Gary Chen. "But we're detecting at least 30 Korthak ships. Each one is 5 times bigger than us." Captain Sullivan was a veteran of humanity's expansion into space. He had fought pirates and dealt with hostile environments on a dozen worlds, but he had never seen anything like this. The Korthak ships looked like they were made of both metal and living tissue. They pulsed with a sickly green light, and their tentacles moved like the arms of some deep-sea monster. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from one of the floating cities," Beth said. "It's the same species that sent the distress call." "Put it through," Sullivan ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was musical and beautiful, even though it was filled with fear. The universal translator worked quickly to convert the alien words into English. "Unknown vessel. This is High Coordinator Velnara of the Zephyrian people. We are so grateful that you have answered our call for help. We knew that fellow seekers of peace and wisdom would understand our situation. Please, can you contact the Korthak vessels and ask them to stop this violence? Surely they will listen to reason if it comes from your advanced civilization." Captain Sullivan looked around at his crew. Every face showed the same confusion he felt. The aliens thought humans were going to negotiate with the monsters who were destroying their world. "High Coordinator," Sullivan replied carefully. "We can see what's happening to your people, but I don't think the Korthak are going to listen to peaceful words." "Oh, but they must," Velnara's voice came back, full of hope. "All intelligent beings can find harmony if they try hard enough. Your people must know this, or you would not have traveled so far to help us. Perhaps you could serve as mediators? Help us find a solution that works for everyone?" Sullivan rubbed his forehead. These aliens really believed that all problems could be solved by talking. They had no idea what kind of species they were dealing with, or what kind of species they had called for help. "Ma'am, with respect, those ships are actively destroying your cities and killing your people. This isn't a misunderstanding that can be fixed with a conversation." There was a long pause before Velnara spoke again. Her voice sounded confused. But you are an advanced, spacefaring civilization. Surely you have moved beyond primitive violence? Surely you understand that all conflicts can be resolved through peaceful means." Before Sullivan could answer, the ship's warning system started blaring. A massive Korthak vessel had detached from the gas giant and was moving toward them. It looked like a giant metal squid with glowing red eyes along its hull. "Captain, we're being scanned," Gary reported. "And we're receiving a transmission from the Korthak ship. Let's hear what they have to say," Sullivan said grimly. The voice that came through the speakers was harsh and mechanical, with an underlying sound like grinding metal. It spoke in the common galactic trade language, which the ship's computer translated instantly. "Unknown vessel, this is War Prime Gaxtor of the Korthak Conquest Fleet. You have entered a combat zone during a harvesting operation. Identify yourself and state your business or be destroyed." Captain Sullivan stood up straight. 20 years of military training kicked in as he recognized the tone of a bully who expected everyone to be afraid of him. "This is Captain Ryan Sullivan of the United Earthship Valiant. We're here in response to a distress call from the Zephyrian people. You are attacking civilians and committing acts of genocide. Stand down immediately." The silence that followed lasted nearly a minute. Then, the Korthak War Prime began to laugh. It was a horrible sound like metal being torn apart. "Earth? I have never heard of this world. You pilot a single small vessel and dare to challenge the might of the Korthak Empire? Your ship appears to be from a heavy gravity world, but that means nothing. We have conquered dozens of systems and enslaved hundreds of species. Depart now, or share the fate of these crystal singers." Sullivan looked at his weapons officer, Lieutenant Commander Mike Foster. Mike was a former Marine who had volunteered for space duty because he liked the idea of protecting human colonies from threats. Right now, his face showed the same cold anger that Sullivan felt. "Sir, should I lock weapons on their ship?" Mike asked quietly. "Not yet," Sullivan replied. Then he opened a channel back to the Korthak vessel. "War Prime Gaxtor, I'm going to give you one chance to withdraw from this system. Stop your attacks on the Zephyrian cities and leave. This is your only warning." The laughter that came back was even louder. "You amuse me, little ship. Your species clearly does not understand the nature of power. Watch as we harvest another city, and perhaps you will learn wisdom." The massive Korthak ship turned away from the Valiant and extended its tentacles toward the nearest floating city. The crystal buildings began to dim as their energy was drained away. Even from space, they could hear the Zephyrians screaming through their communication system. Captain Sullivan had seen enough. He opened a direct channel to Admiral Thompson back on Earth. "Admiral, this is Sullivan. We've reached the alien system, and the situation is worse than we thought. The Korthak Empire is committing genocide against a peaceful species. They just told us to watch while they destroy another city full of civilians." Admiral Thompson's voice came back clear and strong across the light years. "Understood, Captain. Can you engage?" "Sir, they have 30 ships, each one 5 times our size. The Valiant is tough, but we can't take on their entire fleet alone." "You won't be alone," the Admiral replied. "The Third Fleet launched 6 hours ago. Full battle group. 12 battleships, 36 destroyers, 48 frigates, and support vessels. ETA to your position is 18 hours. Sullivan smiled for the first time since entering the system. "Copy that, Admiral. Should we try to hold position until the fleet arrives?" "Negative. Start rescue operations immediately. Get as many civilians out as you can. When the fleet arrives, we're going to show these Korthak what happens when you mess with people under human protection." The transmission ended, and Sullivan turned to his crew. Every face showed the same grim determination. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were human. They didn't run from fights when innocent people needed help. "Beth, open a channel to the Zephyrian cities. Gary, start scanning for the best way to evacuate civilians. Mike, prep all weapon systems. We're going to be very busy for the next 18 hours. Meanwhile, on the largest Zephyrian city, High Coordinator Velnara listened to the human transmissions with growing confusion and fear. These beings she had called for help were talking about fleets and weapons and battles. They used words like genocide and engage the enemy, as if war was something normal and expected. "Science Leader Morthak," she said to her assistant. "What kind of species did we contact?" Morthak was studying the data they had gathered about the human ship. His face had turned even paler than before. "High Coordinator, I've analyzed their vessel's construction and energy signatures. This ship is not designed for exploration or diplomacy. It's a warship. And the materials it's made from, they come from a world with gravity nearly 3 times what most species can survive." "What does that mean?" "It means we didn't send our distress call to a peaceful civilization," Morthak said quietly. "We sent it to a species that builds their exploration ships like battleships and comes from a world so dangerous that they had to become warriors just to survive." Velnara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold atmosphere outside her city. "Are they going to help us or conquer us?" Before Morthak could answer, Captain Sullivan's voice came through their communication system again. This time, his tone was gentle but firm. "High Coordinator Velnara, this is Captain Sullivan. My ship is going to start evacuating your people from the cities that are most at risk. We'll transport them to safe locations until our main fleet arrives. Then, we're going to deal with the Korthak problem permanently." "But Captain," Velnara replied, "surely there must be a peaceful solution. Violence only creates more violence." Sullivan's answer was spoken with the quiet certainty of someone who had seen too much of the universe to believe in easy solutions. "Ma'am, sometimes the only way to stop violence is with superior violence. The Korthak chose this fight when they started killing your people. We're just going to finish it." The space around the Zephyrian system suddenly filled with blinding flashes of light as the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Admiral Jake Thompson stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Liberty, watching as his ships took their positions in a massive battle formation. 12 heavy battleships formed the center of the fleet, each one bristling with weapons and armor. 36 destroyers spread out in hunting packs, designed to chase down enemy ships that tried to escape. 48 frigates moved to protect the larger vessels and provide support fire. Behind them came the support ships, carrying extra ammunition, fuel, and medical supplies for what everyone knew would be a brutal fight. War Prime Gaxtor stared at his sensor readings in disbelief. The small human scout ship had been joined by nearly 100 warships. Each vessel showed the same heavy construction and massive energy signatures. These beings had brought an entire battle fleet to fight for aliens they had never met before. "How is this possible?" he growled to his tactical officer. "They are from a single planet. How can one world field so many warships?" The tactical officer, a smaller Korthak named Vextar, studied the human fleet with growing fear. Warprime, their ship designs are unlike anything in our databases. The power readings suggest they come from a world with extremely high gravity. And the weapons signatures, these are not exploration vessels. These are ships built for war. Gaxtor felt something he had not experienced in many years of conquest: uncertainty. The Korthak Empire had conquered dozens of civilizations by following a simple pattern. Most species built a few warships for defense, and many civilian vessels for trade and exploration. When the Korthak arrived with their massive bioships, the defenders were quickly overwhelmed. But these humans had arrived with nothing but military vessels. Even their smallest ships carried enough firepower to destroy a city. It was as if their entire civilization was organized around the idea of warfare. High Coordinator Velnara watched the human fleet deploy and felt her confusion grow even deeper. She had sent a message asking for wise counselors and peaceful mediators. Instead, she had summoned what looked like the largest military force she had ever seen. "Science Leader Morthak," she said quietly, "how many ships did they bring?" Morthak's hands shook as he operated the scanning equipment. 96 combat vessels, High Coordinator, all heavily armed, all built for war. I don't think these beings know how to build peaceful ships. Admiral Thompson opened a communication channel to all ships in his fleet. His voice was calm and professional, the tone of a man who had done this many times before. "All vessels, this is Admiral Thompson. We have approximately 30 Korthak ships in the system. They are larger than our vessels but appear to rely on biological systems that may be vulnerable to concentrated fire. Primary objective is to stop the attacks on civilian targets. Secondary objective is to eliminate all hostile forces. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. Any ship that attacks civilians is to be destroyed immediately." Captain Sullivan, still aboard the Valiant near the gas giant, felt relief wash over him as he saw the human fleet take position. "Admiral, this is Sullivan. The Korthak have been using their tentacles to drain power from the floating cities. They've destroyed 18 cities since I arrived." "Understood, Captain. Begin rescue operations. We'll handle the Korthak fleet." The first human attack came without warning. Commander Alex Parker led a squadron of destroyers in a high-speed attack run against the nearest Korthak bioship. The human vessels moved faster than anything the Korthak had seen before, weaving between the larger alien ships like angry wasps. Human weapons were different too. Instead of the energy beams most galactic species used, the humans fired solid projectiles at incredible speeds. The metal slugs punched through the Korthak bio-armor like it was paper, causing massive internal damage. The first Korthak ship died in less than 3 minutes. Its organic hull cracked open, spilling green fluid into space as its crew struggled to escape in small pods. The human destroyers didn't waste time celebrating. They immediately moved on to their next target. Warprime Gaxtor realized that everything he knew about warfare was wrong. These humans didn't fight like civilized beings. They didn't announce their attacks or give their enemies time to respond. They simply appeared, destroyed their target, and moved on to the next one. "All ships, attack pattern Gamma," he ordered desperately. "Release the boarding pods. If we can get our warriors onto their ships, we can turn this battle around." The Korthak bioships launched thousands of small pods filled with their best soldiers. Each pod was designed to punch through enemy hulls and deliver troops directly into the heart of an enemy vessel. It was a tactic that had worked against every other species they had fought. The human response was swift and devastating. Point defense weapons on every ship opened fire simultaneously, filling space with a wall of projectiles. Most of the boarding pods were destroyed before they could reach their targets. The few that made it through faced an even worse surprise. Sergeant Maria Rodriguez led the Marine detachment aboard the destroyer UES Hammer. When 3 Korthak pods managed to breach the hull, she and her squad were waiting in the corridor when the alien warriors emerged from their pods. The Korthak soldiers were impressive creatures, standing 8 feet tall with natural armor plating and 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws. They had conquered dozens of species in hand-to-hand combat, but they had never fought humans. Maria and her Marines opened fire the moment the aliens appeared. Human weapons were designed to stop threats quickly and efficiently. The Korthak armor that had protected them against other species meant nothing against human military technology. The battle in the corridor lasted 15 seconds. When it was over, all the Korthak boarding troops were dead, and Maria was already calling for damage control teams to repair the hull breach. Similar scenes played out across the human fleet. The Korthak had never encountered a species that fought with such ruthless efficiency. These humans didn't waste time with threats or demands for surrender. They simply killed anything that posed a danger to their ships or their mission. Admiral Thompson watched the battle progress from his command center. The tactical display showed Korthak ships dying one by one as his forces systematically destroyed the enemy fleet. It was not even really a battle. It was an execution. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a message from the Korthak flagship. The War Prime wants to negotiate." Thompson's expression didn't change. "Tell him to withdraw. All forces from the system immediately. Any ship that doesn't leave in the next 10 minutes will be destroyed." The response came back quickly. "The War Prime says he cannot withdraw without completing the harvest. His empire will execute him if he returns empty-handed." Admiral Thompson looked at the display showing the floating Zephyrian cities, many of them damaged and all of them filled with innocent civilians who had never hurt anyone. Then he looked at the Korthak ships that had been systematically murdering those civilians for days. "Then I guess he has a choice to make," Thompson said quietly. "He can face his empire's justice or he can face ours. Either way, he's not leaving this system with stolen Zephyrian energy cores." High Coordinator Velnara watched the battle from her floating city and struggled to understand what she was seeing. The beings she had called for help were fighting, with a level of violence and coordination that seemed impossible. Every movement was calculated. Every attack was designed for maximum damage. There was no hesitation, no mercy, no attempt to find a peaceful solution. "They're not like us at all," she whispered to Morthak. "They don't see war as something to be avoided. They see it as something to be won." Morthak nodded grimly as he watched another Korthak ship explode under human weapons fire. "I've been analyzing their transmissions and ship designs. These humans come from what galactic classification would call a Class 12 death world. Everything on their planet tried to kill them for millions of years. They didn't become peaceful through evolution. They became the most dangerous predators in their environment. But they came to help us," Velnara said, confused. "Why would such violent beings risk their lives for strangers?" "Because," Morthak replied as he watched human rescue ships pulling survivors from damaged Zephyrian cities. "They're not violent by choice. They're violent to protect things they care about. And for some reason, they've decided they care about us." The battle was turning into a rout. The Korthak bioships, designed to intimidate and overwhelm less advanced civilizations, were no match for human military doctrine. Captain Diana Foster led her battleship squadron in a flanking maneuver that trapped the remaining enemy vessels against the gas giant's gravity well. War Prime Gaxtor sent one final message to his empire before his flagship was destroyed. "Avoid the Sol system at all costs. We have encountered a species of Deathworlders beyond our capabilities. They fight like demons and show no mercy to those who threaten innocence. The harvest is lost. Repeat, avoid Earth and all human territories." The message was cut short as human weapons fire tore through the Korthak command ship. Within minutes, the last of the alien invaders were either dead or fleeing into deep space. Admiral Thompson opened a channel to the Zephyrian cities. The battle for the Zephyrian system became something that would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. What the Korthak Empire expected to be a simple intimidation of a single small ship turned into their worst nightmare. Captain Diana Foster commanded the UES Retribution, one of the heavy battleships in Admiral Thompson's fleet. She had fought in 3 colonial wars and earned her rank through 20 years of combat experience. As she watched her tactical display, she saw an opportunity that made her smile coldly. "Navigation. Plot a course behind that cluster of Korthak. Ships," she ordered. "Weapons. Prepare a full broadside. We're going to hit them where they don't expect it." The Retribution and her escort vessels moved through space like hunting sharks. The Korthak were focused on the main human fleet attacking from the front. They never saw the flanking force until it was too late. "Fire!" Diana commanded. The battleship's main guns spoke in unison, sending massive projectiles into the rear of the Korthak formation. 3 bioships exploded immediately, their organic hulls unable to withstand the concentrated firepower. The surviving ships tried to turn and face this new threat, but human destroyers were already among them, firing at point-blank range. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Murray piloted his fighter through the chaos of the battle, leading a squadron of human attack craft. The small ships moved like angry wasps around the massive Korthak vessels, targeting weak points that larger ships couldn't reach. "Blue Leader, this is Blue 3, came a voice over his radio. "I've got a shot at that bioship's power core." "Take it, Blue 3, Steve replied as he rolled his fighter to avoid a stream of alien plasma fire. "All squadrons focus on power and life support systems, make them hurt." The human fighters were designed for this kind of work. They were small, fast, and carried weapons powerful enough to damage ships 100 times their size. The pilots had trained for years to fly in the middle of space battles, weaving between friendly and enemy fire with split-second precision. Steve watched as Blue 3's missiles found their target. The Korthak bioship's lights flickered and died as its power core went critical. Another enemy vessel eliminated, and his squadron was already moving on to the next target. War Prime Gaxtor realized that his empire had made a terrible mistake. These humans didn't fight like any species he had ever encountered. They coordinated their attacks across multiple levels, from massive battleships down to tiny fighters. Every unit worked together like parts of a single deadly machine. "Tactical, Officer Vextar," he growled. "Deploy the terror pods. Target the floating cities. If we cannot win this battle, we will force them to surrender by threatening their civilians." It was a tactic that had worked many times before. Most species would stop fighting to protect innocent lives. Even if they were winning the battle, they would negotiate rather than watch civilians die. Vextar hesitated. "War Prime, our remaining ships are barely holding together. If we split our forces to attack the cities—" "Do it!" Gaxtor roared. "These humans will learn that defying the Korthak Empire has consequences." Dozens of smaller Korthak vessels broke away from the main battle and headed toward the floating Zephyrian cities. Each ship carried bioweapons designed to destroy entire populations quickly and efficiently. If they reached the cities, millions of innocent Zephyrians would die. Admiral Thompson saw the enemy movement on his tactical display and felt a cold anger settle in his chest. He had seen this tactic before, used by pirates and terrorists who thought they could win by threatening the innocent. "All fighters, emergency intercept," he ordered. "Do not let those ships reach the civilian targets." Colonel Nancy Wright led the response in her heavy fighter, pushing her engines beyond their safety limits to catch the Korthak terror ships. Behind her flew every available human pilot, from experienced veterans to young officers who had never seen real combat before. "This is Falcon Leader," Nancy broadcast to her pilots. "Those ships are heading for civilian targets. We stop them, here, or millions of innocents die. I don't care what it costs us." The human fighters caught the Korthak terror ships halfway to the floating cities. The enemy vessels were fast and well armed, but they had not expected such a desperate response. The humans attacked with a fury that shocked even their own commanders. Nancy's fighter took a direct hit from a Korthak plasma cannon, but she kept flying. Her left engine was destroyed and her cockpit was filling with smoke, but the enemy ship in front of her was still heading toward a city full of civilians. "Falcon Leader to all units," she said calmly into her radio. "My ship is badly damaged. I'm going to ram that lead terror ship, continue the intercept without me." Before anyone could respond, Nancy pushed her fighter to maximum speed and aimed directly at the largest Korthak vessel. Her fighter crashed into the enemy ship's command section, and both vessels exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The sacrifice was not in vain. Inspired by their colonel's example, the human pilots threw themselves at the remaining terror ships with reckless courage. Some rammed enemy vessels when their weapons ran out of ammunition. Others flew suicide runs to block shots aimed at the Zephyrian cities. Within minutes, every Korthak terror ship was destroyed. The floating cities were safe, but the cost had been heavy. 16 human pilots had given their lives to protect aliens they had never met. High Coordinator Velnara watched the battle from her city's observation deck and felt something she had never experienced before. These human warriors were dying to protect her people. They were sacrificing themselves for strangers from another world. Why? She whispered to science leader Morthak. Why would they do this for us? Morthak had been studying the human battle communications, trying to understand their motivations. High Coordinator, I think I'm beginning to understand. They don't see us as strangers. In their minds, we became their responsibility the moment we asked for help. On the UES Liberty, Admiral Thompson received the casualty reports with grim satisfaction. The terror attack had been stopped, but good people had died to make it happen. He opened a channel to the entire human fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Thompson. The enemy has shown their true nature by targeting civilians. From this point forward, any Korthak vessel that attempts to surrender will be ignored. We finish this now. The order went out across the human fleet, and the character of the battle changed completely. The humans had been fighting professionally before, but now they fought with personal anger. The Korthak had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Captain Alex Parker led his destroyer squadron in a final assault on the remaining Korthak ships. The enemy vessels were trapped against the gas giant's gravity well with nowhere to run. Some tried to surrender, but the humans ignored their transmissions and continued firing. Sir, his weapons officer asked quietly, they're trying to surrender. Shouldn't we accept? Parker looked at his tactical display, which still showed the locations where human pilots had died protecting Zephyrian civilians. They had their chance to surrender before they attacked innocents. Now they get to learn what happens when you threaten people under human protection. The last Korthak bioship died under concentrated fire from 3 human battleships. Warprime Gaxtor's final message to his empire was cut short as his command center was vaporized by a direct hit from the UES Liberty's main guns. The silence that followed the end of the battle was broken only by the static of damaged communication systems and the quiet voices of human rescue teams coordinating their efforts to help the Zephyrian survivors. Admiral Thompson stood on his bridge, looking out at the floating cities his fleet had saved. Some were badly damaged and others had been completely destroyed, but most were still intact. Millions of innocent lives had been preserved. Communications, open a channel to all Zephyrian cities, he ordered. Channel open, sir. Thompson's voice carried across the system to every surviving Zephyrian. This is Admiral Thompson of the Human Defense Fleet. The Korthak Empire's forces in this system have been eliminated. You are safe. We are dispatching medical and engineering teams to assist with rescue and repair operations. High Coordinator Velnara's response came back filled with emotion. Admiral Thompson, there are no words in our language for what you have done. You have saved our entire civilization. How can we ever repay such a debt? Thompson smiled grimly as he watched human ships already moving to help the damaged alien cities. Ma'am, there's no debt. When someone asks for help, you help them. That's what decent people do. The battle was over, but its consequences would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. News of the Korthak Empire's defeat by a single planet's forces spread quickly through interstellar space. Peaceful species began to look toward the Sol system with hope, while aggressive empires marked human space as territory to be avoided at all costs. But Admiral Thompson wasn't thinking about galactic politics as he watched his crews work to save Zephyrian lives. He was thinking about the 16 pilots who had died protecting innocents, and about the responsibility that came with being the kind of species that others called for help. The humans had come to this system expecting to fight a battle. Instead, they had fought a war, and they had won it in the most human way possible, by refusing to let innocent people die on their watch. 3 days after the battle ended, High Coordinator Velnara stood in the docking bay of the UES Liberty, waiting to meet the humans who had saved her civilization. She felt nervous in a way she had never experienced before. How do you thank someone for preventing the extinction of your entire species? The docking bay was massive, bigger than most Zephyrian buildings. Everything about the human ship spoke of strength and purpose. The walls were thick metal designed to withstand weapons fire. The equipment was built for efficiency rather than beauty. Even the air felt heavier because of the ship's artificial gravity, which was set to match the conditions of the human homeworld. Admiral Jake Thompson entered the bay wearing his dress uniform, followed by several other officers. Velnara was surprised by how ordinary they looked. She had expected the fearsome Deathworlders to be giants with claws and fangs. Instead, they looked like any other bipedal species, though they moved with a confidence that suggested they were comfortable with violence. "High Coordinator Velnara," Admiral Thompson said with a slight bow. "Welcome aboard the Liberty. I'm Admiral Thompson, commander of the Human Defense Fleet." Velnara tried to copy the human gesture of respect. "Admiral Thompson, my people owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You saved us from complete destruction." "You don't owe us anything," Thompson replied simply. "You asked for help and we helped. That's what neighbors do." The simplicity of his answer confused Velnara. In Zephyrian culture, such a massive favor would create obligations that lasted for generations. "But Admiral, you lost 16 of your people protecting our cities. Surely that creates some responsibility on our part." Thompson's expression grew serious. "Those pilots died doing their job, which was protecting innocent lives. Their sacrifice honored us all. The only thing you owe them is to live good lives and remember what they did." Dr. Kevin White, the fleet's chief xenobiologist, stepped forward. He had spent the last 3 days studying Zephyrian culture and biology, trying to understand how two such different species could coexist. "High Coordinator," Dr. White said gently, "I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding between our peoples. You sent your distress call expecting to contact a peaceful, wise civilization that would solve your problems through diplomacy and meditation." "Yes," Velnara agreed. "We assumed that any species advanced enough for interstellar travel would have moved beyond primitive violence." Dr. White smiled sadly. "That's where the misunderstanding occurred. Humans didn't become peaceful through evolution. We became better at violence through evolution. Our planet tried to kill us every day for millions of years, so we learned to fight back. We're not wise philosophers who happen to have spaceships. We're warriors who learned how to build spaceships so we could protect more people." Ambassador Helen Clark joined the conversation. She was a diplomat who specialized in first contact situations, though she had never dealt with anything quite like this before. "The important thing," Ambassador Clark said, "is that we found a way to help each other. Your people called for aid and our people answered. Now we need to figure out what comes next." Velnara looked around at the human officers. Each one carried themselves like a warrior, but their eyes showed genuine concern for her people's welfare. It was a combination that her species had never encountered before. "What do you mean? What comes next?" she asked. Admiral Thompson pulled up a holographic display showing the local region of space. Red markers indicated hostile species like the Korthic Empire. Green markers showed peaceful civilizations. Yellow markers represented unknowns. "High Coordinator, the Korthic Empire controlled over 40 star systems before we destroyed their fleet here. Most of those systems contain enslaved populations of peaceful species like yours, and there are other aggressive empires out there doing the same thing." "You're saying this will happen again?" "It's almost certain," Thompson replied, grimly. "Word of our intervention here is already spreading through galactic communication networks. Some species will see us as potential protectors. Others will see us as threats to be eliminated." Dr. White brought up another display showing intercepted alien communications. "We've already detected increased military activity in several hostile territories. Some aggressive species are discussing the need to deal with the human problem before we can intervene in more conflicts." Velnara felt overwhelmed by the implications. "So, by saving us, you've made yourselves targets for every violent species in the galaxy?" "Pretty much," Admiral Thompson said with a slight smile. "But that's not your fault. We knew this would happen when we decided to help you. We just decided that some things are worth fighting for." Ambassador Clark leaned forward. "That's why we want to propose a formal alliance between our peoples. Not a trade agreement or a non-aggression pact, but a true partnership." "What kind of partnership?" Velnara asked. "Your people have advanced energy technology that could greatly benefit human civilization. Dr. White explained. Your harmony crystals produce more power than anything we've developed, and they do it without harmful radiation or waste products. And in return, Admiral Thompson's expression grew serious. In return, the human defense fleet would guarantee the security of Zephyrian space. Any species that threatens your people would have to go through us first. Velnara thought about the offer carefully. Admiral, I must ask you something directly. Are humans conquerors? Will you protect us now only to enslave us later? The question hung in the air for a long moment. Then Thompson laughed, a sound that was both amused and bitter. High Coordinator, humans don't conquer people who ask for our help. We conquer people who threaten others. There's a big difference. But surely you must want something from us beyond energy technology, Ambassador Clark answered this time. We want you to be successful, peaceful, and happy. Humans have a saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. When our friends prosper, we prosper too. Over the following weeks, Captain Ryan Sullivan established the first human embassy on the largest Zephyrian floating city. The cultural exchange was fascinating for both species. The Zephyrians learned about human concepts like protective aggression and peace through strength. The humans learned about harmony crystals and social cooperation. The children adapted fastest. Young humans and Zephyrians played together in the crystal gardens, their laughter echoing through the floating city. Sullivan often watched them and marveled at how quickly the young could accept differences that confused their elders. Captain Sullivan, High Coordinator Velnara said one day as they watched the children play, I've been thinking about what your admiral said, about humans being warriors who learned to build spaceships to protect more people. What about it? We sent our distress call to the wrong species, according to our expectations. But we sent it to exactly the right species according to our needs. Sullivan nodded. Sometimes the universe has a sense of irony. You wanted peaceful mediators, but what you really needed was someone willing to fight for you. News of the human intervention spread throughout the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within months, Admiral Thompson began receiving requests for assistance from dozens of peaceful species. Some were under attack by aggressive neighbors. Others lived in fear of empires that might someday turn their attention toward them. Each request was carefully evaluated by a joint human-Zephyrian committee. The humans provided military expertise and threat assessment. The Zephyrians offered cultural analysis and diplomatic insight. Together they developed criteria for intervention that balanced human military capabilities with moral obligations. The Korthak Empire's collapse sent shockwaves through the galactic balance of power. Without their military strength to maintain, control enslaved species throughout their territory began to rebel. Some called for human assistance. Others managed to liberate themselves using captured Korthak technology. The most significant change was psychological. For the first time in galactic history, peaceful species had someone to call when aggressive neighbors threatened them. The mere knowledge that help might be available changed how interstellar conflicts developed. 6 months after the battle, Admiral Thompson stood in his office on Earth, reviewing reports from across human space. His desk was covered with requests for assistance, intelligence reports on hostile species, and diplomatic proposals from potential allies. Sir, his aide announced, you have another delegation waiting to see you. Representatives from the Centauri Collective. They're requesting protection from the hegemony of worlds. Thompson looked out his window at the orbital shipyards where new human warships were under construction. The defense fleet had expanded rapidly to meet the growing demand for protection services. Send them in, he said quietly. Let's see what kind of help they need. As the alien delegation entered his office, Thompson reflected on how much had changed since the Zephyrians sent their desperate message. The humans had accidentally become the galaxy's police force, a role they had never sought but seemed uniquely qualified to fill. The final irony was not lost on him. The Zephyrians had called for peace, and the humans had given them the only kind of peace that lasted in a dangerous universe. The peace that came when predators feared the consequences of hunting prey,